Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a truly fascinating and often overlooked chapter of World War II history. Forget the big guns and thick armor for a moment, because we're talking about an invisible weapon that absolutely revolutionized armored warfare, the radio. Specifically, the incredible story of American ingenuity that turned every Sherman tank into a node in the first true battlefield network. Imagine this. It's February 20th, 1943. North of Casarin Pass, Tunisia. The desert sun is just peeking over the horizon, painting long, stark shadows across this rugged landscape. German Panzer IVs are rumbling cautiously, their engines growling as they move. For the veteran Wehrmacht commanders, this is familiar territory. They operate on a clear hierarchy, strict discipline, and visual signals. Flags waving, flares shooting into the sky, dispatch riders bravely weaving between vehicles. These are their communication lifelines. If a platoon lost sight of its leader, chaos was usually just around the corner. But on this particular morning, something utterly defied every doctrine ingrained in their minds. Across this broken, uneven terrain, 5 American Sherman tanks were maneuvering with what seemed like a single, unified consciousness. Dust was swirling. Smoke from distant skirmishes hung heavy, and yet, despite being separated by ridges and craters, these tanks moved with flawless coordination. No flags, no flares, no daring dispatch riders. Every single Sherman knew exactly where its comrades were, anticipating moves, covering blind spots, and executing tactical maneuvers that the Germans genuinely believed required constant line-of-sight communication. Meanwhile, inside those German Panzer IVs, it was a completely different story. Their FUG-5 radios, state-of-the-art for the 1930s, were struggling. The noise of moving engines, the friction of tracks, electrical interference from ignition systems, it all conspired to render their 10-watt transmitters almost useless over anything but very short distances. And here's the kicker. Only the command vehicles had full transceivers, meaning they could both talk and listen. The vast majority of tanks could only listen. Commands had to trickle down a rigid hierarchy, often acknowledged by movement rather than clear-spoken word. If a command tank went down, that platoon often dissolved into utter confusion. But the American tanks? Oh, they were operating on a whole other level. Each one was equipped with an SCR-508 radio. This wasn't just any radio, it was a marvel of technology. We're talking frequency modulation, or FM, crystal-controlled precision, powerful 25-watt transmitters, and dual receivers. All of this meant Sherman crews could communicate clearly through the roaring engines, through artillery barrages, and even through the thick desert dust. Every single Sherman tank wasn't just a vehicle. It was a node in a nascent battlefield network. They could receive, transmit, coordinate attacks, and call for artillery support with surgical precision. This was a game changer. This transformation wasn't born overnight. It was the culmination of incredible industrial ingenuity happening 8,000 miles away, right in Detroit's assembly lines. The genesis began years earlier. On July 22, 1941, the U.S. Army standardized the SCR-508, SCR-528, and SCR-538 radio sets for all medium tanks. American engineers at Galvin Manufacturing Company, which you might know today as Motorola, worked tirelessly to perfect FM technology for the absolute brutal realities of combat. Visionaries like Daniel E. Noble, who championed the application of FM, and Henryk Magnowski, the principal RF engineer, solved immense technical challenges. Imagine trying to put sensitive electronics into a tank where vibration, heat, and shock could destroy anything less than robust. Their creation, weighing in at 181 pounds, literally turned every Sherman into a connected part of a network. The real magic, though, was FM itself. While older amplitude modulation, or AM, radios would suffer interference from every spark plug, every electrical motor, every artillery explosion, FM delivered crystal-clear communication even with shells landing all around. Then came November 8, 1942, Operation Torch. This was the moment American armored forces truly arrived in North Africa. The 2nd Armored Division landed with their Shermans, fully equipped with SCR-508 radios. For the Africa Corps, the results were, frankly, bewildering. The Germans, so accustomed to their hierarchical and visually dependent command structures, simply couldn't grasp how American tanks could coordinate complex maneuvers over distances where their own radios were only spitting out static. Think about it. A standard German platoon of 5 tanks and only 1 or maybe 2 could actually talk. The rest could just listen. This rigid structure, which had once been effective, suddenly became a massive vulnerability against Americans who could fight as flexible, autonomous units, all connected by radio. The Battle of Casarin Pass, from February 14th to 24th, 1943, was the first concrete proof of this technological revolution. And while it was technically a German victory on paper, the battle laid bare the unprecedented coordination of American armor. Scattered elements of the U.S. 1st Armored Division maintained seamless communication across 50 miles of contested desert terrain. Crews who had never even met were coordinating attacks, warning each other of threats, and calling in artillery support, all thanks to FM radio. German signals intelligence actually noted the exceptional clarity of American communications and the fact that every tank could transmit, not just the command vehicles. This was a critical piece of intelligence that they perhaps underestimated. Across the desert, and later in the rugged mountains of Italy, the superiority of American FM technology became increasingly obvious. Terrain that should have made long-distance communication impossible only amplified the weaknesses of the German AM radios. Meanwhile, the SCR-508s kept performing flawlessly, enabling Sherman crews to operate as a unified organism, adapting to obstacles, terrain, and enemy action in ways German doctrine simply deemed impossible. The industrial and technical achievements behind this were staggering. Every single SCR-508 radio required meticulous assembly, 2,748 individual components, hundreds of capacitors, resistors, and crystal oscillators, all built to withstand the extreme rigors of combat. The tactical implications were profound. Suddenly, flexible command structures, rapid adaptation to battlefield conditions, and integrated coordination with artillery and air support became not just possible, but routine. Sherman crews fought with the absolute knowledge that they were never isolated. They were part of a vast, connected network. German crews, in stark contrast, often fought under conditions of extreme isolation, unable to communicate effectively beyond visual range, their coordination dictated by fragile hierarchies and severely limited radio technology. By mid-1943, these FM-equipped Shermans had completely redefined armored warfare. The Germans, even with technically superior tanks in some respects, simply couldn't match the operational cohesion and rapid responsiveness of American units. Every engagement highlighted the consequences of this invisible advantage: superior tactics, faster response times, and unprecedented battlefield awareness. The story of the Sherman's radio superiority wasn't just about a piece of technology. It was a revolution in command and control. The electromagnetic waves connecting American tanks fundamentally transformed what it meant to fight as an armored force. Coordination, situational awareness, and flexibility became as decisive as armor thickness or gun caliber. At Casarin Pass and in subsequent battles across Italy, France, and Germany, the Germans learned this lesson, tragically too late. The Sherman tank was no longer just a vehicle. It was a node in the first true armored battlefield network, a network that would forever change the very nature of modern warfare. This networked warfare philosophy truly blossomed by the spring of 1943. While German commanders were still relying on rigid hierarchies and those visual signals, American tank units fully embraced a fundamentally different approach: decentralized command, empowered by reliable, universal communication. The Sherman tank, as we've discussed, became an intelligence hub, capable of sharing information instantly across the entire battlefield. The North African campaigns were where these consequences truly became apparent. German tank commanders, many of whom had fought in France, Poland, and the Eastern Front, were trained to coordinate attacks visually, or at best, through a single command radio in their platoon. But here were the Americans, every Sherman capable of transmitting and receiving simultaneously, allowing commanders to monitor multiple channels, track friendly units, and coordinate maneuvers with a precision that made traditional German tactics feel obsolete. Let's revisit that moment near Casarin Pass. Those 5 Sherman tanks advancing independently across broken terrain, separated by ridges and depressions. German Panzer IV crews could barely see a few hundred meters ahead, relying on line-of-sight commands or an occasional flare from their platoon leader. Each Sherman, however, knew exactly where its comrades were, communicated threats and opportunities, and adjusted its fire to cover blind spots that German doctrine had assumed were simply unavoidable. The Germans genuinely could not comprehend the level of coordination happening invisibly through those radio waves. The technical superiority was astounding. The backbone of this battlefield network was the SCR-508 series. Each tank carried that BC604 transmitter, blasting out 25 watts. Its crystal-controlled oscillators ensured frequency stability within an astonishing +1 diodes, 0.01%, a critical feature in chaotic battlefield conditions where older amplitude modulation systems would constantly drift. And those dual BC603 receivers, they allowed the commander to monitor both platoon and company channels simultaneously. This meant a single Sherman could coordinate with its immediate allies while also receiving instructions from higher command echelons. It was multitasking on the battlefield, and we can't say enough about FM technology itself. AM radios, standard in German tanks, were highly susceptible to interference from engine sparks, electrical motors, artillery detonations, and even atmospheric conditions. FM, pioneered by the brilliant Edwin Armstrong and meticulously adapted for military use, virtually eliminated all static and interference. German crews would often hear nothing but a chaotic mix of noise and fragmented orders, while American tankers enjoyed crystal-clear voice communication, even under heavy artillery barrages. It was truly an unfair advantage. Operation Torch in November 1942 perfectly demonstrated the practical impact of these innovations. Sherman units, fully equipped with SCR-508 radios, landed in North Africa, ready to coordinate in conditions that the Germans had previously believed impossible. German intelligence reports even noted the exceptional clarity and discipline of American communications, but here is where they made their critical mistake. They largely attributed it to superior training rather than the actual superior technology. This underestimation would, tragically for them, haunt them throughout the war. The SCR-508 radios were not just a testament to technical ingenuity, but also to the sheer might of American industrial capacity. Each unit, as we mentioned, required 2,148 individual components, painstakingly assembled to exacting standards. The production numbers speak for themselves: 3,800 units in 1942, 11,400 in 1943, and 24 tons in 1944. Total wartime production soared past 50,000 units, ensuring that every single one of the 49,324 Sherman tanks was fully equipped. No other nation approached this level of full deployment for advanced battlefield communication systems. This combination of mass production and unwavering reliability created a tactical advantage that extended far beyond individual battles. With every tank capable of transmitting and receiving, commanders could form ad hoc task forces on the fly, coordinate across divisions, and respond to threats dynamically. German units, despite sometimes having superior armor or firepower, often struggled to maintain cohesion when separated or under fire. The Sherman AS networked communication allowed for truly decentralized command and rapid adaptability. It was a force multiplier that completely reshaped operational doctrine. North Africa was just the beginning. In Italy, the mountainous terrain posed even more severe communication challenges. Line-of-sight coordination was practically impossible across those jagged ridges and deep valleys. German AM radios suffered catastrophic interference, reducing effective communication ranges to mere hundreds of meters. Sherman units, however, with their robust FM technology, excelled in these conditions. Coordination was maintained even across the most complex terrain, enabling operations like the advance toward Cassino, where tanks separated by entire ridgelines maneuvered in concert with a precision that absolutely defied German expectations. Operation Cobra in late July 1944 further showcased the power of networked communication. Over 200 Sherman tanks of the 2nd Armored Division coordinated attacks through their radio networks, sharing target data, calling in artillery, and responding to enemy threats in real time. German Panther tanks and elite armored brigades, despite their vaunted firepower and armor, were systematically defeated. Why? Because they couldn't match American operational cohesion. Over 3 weeks, the 4th Armored Division destroyed 281 German armored vehicles while losing only 41 Shermans, an incredible kill ratio of nearly 7:1. The psychological impact on the crews was profound. Sherman tankers fought with the certainty that they were never alone. Information flowed continuously. Threats were identified and shared instantly. Artillery support was coordinated precisely, and units could maneuver with confidence. German tankers, in chilling contrast, experienced profound isolation. Unable to communicate effectively, they often found themselves fighting individual engagements, completely disconnected from any broader tactical awareness. It must have been a terrifying experience. The implications extended far beyond just tactics and immediate battle.